What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I want to talk to you guys about the Kiwiears Quartet. Now, shout out to Linsoul for sending this out for review. All thoughts and opinions are of my own. So the Quartet retails in at $109 and features their double titanium diaphragm dynamic driver system that basically has their new isobaric double dynamic subwoofer. Now, whenever you hear the word subwoofer, you think bass, right? Well, we're going to get into that when we talk about sound. First of all, inside the box, I would like to let you guys know that, of course, you get the IEMs. You're going to get 3 sets of silicone ear tips. Now, these are very basic ear tips. They are 3 different colors. They do nothing for the sound, depending on which ones you listen to. They also don't seem to do anything different to the comfort. Just 3 sets of tips. You're also going to get a very nice black zippered case that I have sitting here, and it says Kiwiears on it. I always appreciate a nice case to put my IEMs in, and then also the cable. Now the cable is this black cable, and it's got kind of a rubbery material to it, but what I really like about the cable is the fact that it doesn't kink up or anything. Of course, I got this wrapped up, but it falls straight flat. Again, doesn't kink up. And the other really nice thing about this cable is the fact that it actually has red and clear, or white, whichever you want to call it, notating the left and right channel to plug these into the IEMs. I just think that's something I wish all these cables would come with, because sometimes that gets confusing for me. Right, and so then the last thing you're going to get is a very basic set of instructions for the IEMs, which I will discuss why I say very basic here in a bit. And so moving on to the IEMs themselves, they are made of this resin material, and they are all actually handmade, each set of IEMs. It's a deep purple and black color. I love the purple on these IEMs. I love the color of these IEMs. It says Kiwiears on there. You're going to see this little switch mechanism here, which I will talk about here in a bit. But these just feel really nice to the touch. They're solid. They're not fingerprint magnets, which I really appreciate, especially coming off of the SimGot EA500 I just did. And they're just, they're just nice to the touch, nice in the hand. Now, one thing I will say, a little bit on the chunky side, right? Or thick side, if you want to, whichever you want to call that. So the reason why I bring that up is that even the nozzle on here is resin. Now, when you put the tips on, it goes right up to the IEM. So I had comfort issues right away when I put these on. Not comfort issues as in they were uncomfortable. Comfort issues as in they didn't fit right away. In fact, I had to kind of wiggle them around. And what I found was I had to use a medium-sized tip on this one, a large size on this one. Once I did that, I was able to get them to fit correctly and to seal. And the most important things with IEMs is getting a proper seal. Otherwise, you completely lose your bass response, and a lot of things are just going to sound a little bit wonky. So one thing to note on that with the fit. And then technical wise, these are 110 dB per milliwatt. They are 32 ohms and have a frequency response of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. What I want to really talk to you guys about is what these switches do, because depending on how you have these set, you're going to get different sound signatures, different sound impressions out of this. So what I want to start with is talk to you about the default settings, which is both of these switches on. My best way I know to describe the sound is a V-shaped tuning. And the reason why I think it's V-shaped is because my best guess, I should say, on these switches is that I think the first switch is going to be a bass boost type switch, and the second one is going to be something in the treble. Now, there's nothing that tells me that for sure, but that's just what I heard. And that's why I said V-shape, because I don't feel like the mid-range is lost on this at all. I don't feel like, it's got a scooped out mid-range or anything like that. It's just the bass boost is big enough, the treble spike is spicy enough, not sibilant, that it is kind of a V-shaped tuning. And what I can tell you is, I know V-shape's not for everyone, but when I use these with gaming, with the default tuning, with the V-shaped sound, both switches turned on, I love that sound. It gave my games some engagement factor, some excitement to them. If you like watching movies with IEMs, I would recommend that switch, or at least trying that with these. It just, like I said, just the low end. I was playing Jedi Survivor, and I've been playing that for a while on Steam, and I love that game. And it sounded so good on this IM because just the lightsaber of the whoom, whoom, I can't really do that sound that well, but just that sound, and then just the explosions, the animals, the grunt noises that they make, the big stomping footsteps that you'll hear, and then the high end for like the voices and things like that just came through crystal clear. So really fun tuning defaultly with that V-shaped tuning. And when I say bass, don't get me wrong, there's some bass out of these. I mean, they said subwoofer, and I definitely felt it, and it was a nice controlled boosted bass that you get with both switches on. All right. So now let's talk about the left switch on, but the right switch off. Now, this was my least favorite tuning of them all because what you get here is a bass boost, and then the mid-range and treble are just kind of, I don't want to say flat necessarily, but I think the mid-range is more flat, and the treble is just, not much there at all. And it's a dark tuning. It's a warm and dark tuning, and just was not exciting for me. I could see if you're somebody that maybe is a studio, wanting to use these for studio monitoring, and you want to just pick out low end of music and you don't want the other things to distract. Sure. I mean, I could see using it for something like that, but everyday listening to music, not my thing, not something I enjoyed. So I quickly kind of moved on from that one. Now, the next setting I'll talk about is the left switch off, so bass boost off, and the right switch on, so a little bit of a treble boost on. Now, I think this one's going to be one that's going to cater to a lot of people and maybe a lot of people's favorite choice, because to me, this was almost felt like a Harman type tuning to where you get a little bit of that boosted treble. So even though you get some nice low end still, don't get me wrong, you get enough of that sparkle on the top end. So if you like classical music, jazz, natural instruments, anything like that, it's going to come through and shine through pretty nice. And even vocalists as well, if you really want to focus on that vocalist. I think also that one probably lended the best to the mid-range, because the mid-range on any setting is a little bit pixelated. And what I mean by pixelated is like, I think I made this analogy before, but think of like watching some TV, and let's say you put like a 1080p video on a 4K TV. It's going to seem a little pixelated, right? It's going to seem a little fuzzy, and that's kind of the mid-range to me. And that's why I said it's not scooped out. I just think when you have the treble up, when you have the bass up, it just kind of overpowers that mid-range a little bit to where it's just not very clear. Almost is like a muffled sound at times, and not a terrible, terrible sound, just something definitely I would note not quite as resolving. So move on from the mid-range there, and I'll stop beating it up so bad. So now the last one I want to talk to you about is both switches off, which is honestly my number one preference that I have. Now, basically, funny enough, that's basically with no EQ. And I'm kind of a no EQ guy, so big surprise, right? Well, no, I mean, seriously, the reason why I like that so much is these already have plenty of bass going for them, that turning that switch off, I didn't feel like I dropped out too much of it. Maybe a little bit into the extension wasn't as much. When I think of the track Trent Moeller, Chameleon, by Trent Moeller, that's a track I like to sample a lot with bass. And I felt that extension really well with that bass boost switch on. But when I turned it off, I still felt it. It was just more subtle and didn't hit quite as hard down low. And I was okay with that because I still felt it. The extension was still there and present. And then with that treble turned off, you might be thinking, well, that's going to sound too dark. It doesn't. There's still enough treble energy there and enough sparkle there that, tracks that had vocalists, vocal focused music, I think still sounded excellent on that. Adele, Lana Del Rey, Norah Jones, Chris Cornell, different vocalists and things. I listened, with this setting, sounded fantastic. And one more track I do want to talk about, because I found this through Tidal and I suddenly have put this on my favorite list. I'm going to butcher his name, but Joe Bonamassa or Bonamassa, however you say it. There's a track called Blues Deluxe. Look it up and play it. Even if you don't like blues, the crunchiness of the guitar and just the powerful voice that he has when he kicks in, and just the growl out of it, and just some grit out of that guitar, reminding me a lot of Stevie Ray Vaughan. That track sounded incredible on this IM with both switches off, but even with both on and that V-shaped tuning, I still listened and it still sounded fantastic as well. But man, that is a fun track to listen to on any kind of device that sounds good. So I would definitely, sample that one out and see what you think. So I told you about the fact that these have the switches. Obviously, that's what we've been talking about. Well, the wonderful instruction booklet here tells you nothing about the switches, funny enough. They don't tell you what they do. They don't tell you anything about them. They don't even tell you that you should grab yourself something like, you won't be able to see this on camera, but this is a SIM card ejection pin that I happen to have. This works perfect, by the way, for the switches because I was afraid to scratch the resin on the IM. So that's what I'd recommend using. But none of it's mentioned in this booklet at all, which is kind of odd. And even when you go to the website, which I have pulled up in me here, there's still nothing in there even to date. So that's something Kiwiears, probably needs to get going on their side, is at least talking about that. This would be one scenario where I'm okay with somebody posting a measurement and saying, hey, this is the measurement of switch 1, this is the measurement of switch 2, you get where I'm going, so on and so forth, or at least a sound description of it, because that's one thing I think they missed on the Quartet. Overall though, this is a solid sounding IM. It's probably, I haven't heard a lot of $100 IMs, but it's definitely one of my favorites. Comparing this to the EA500 was interesting because the EA500 is about $30 cheaper. Is this about 30 to 40% better? That's a tough way to call it. I like a lot of things about the EA500 that I also liked about this one. There was differences in stage, I would say. I think the EA500 had a little more stage. This one's okay, but it's nothing overly wide. Both of them image well. The fit on the EA500 definitely was a better fit for me. They're a smaller IM, so they snugged right in, and they both have different tunings. So I think that's an interesting comparison to have. I still think I would prefer this one just because I like the resin. The fingerprint mattiness of the EA500 I wasn't a fan of. And the fact of the different tunings with this was fantastic as well. One last thing I want to note is on power requirements. Now, this is obviously very easy to drive, being an IEM, and you can drive this perfectly fine on a phone, laptop, or anything like that. However, when I powered this on my nice little IFI Go bar that I like to reference so much, this guy here, it gave a little bit more of a boost, and I think these actually do well with a little bit of power. You don't need crazy power, but it gives a little bit more to the dynamics of the IM, gives a little bit more of that punchiness, a little more of that hit, a little more of that snappiness up in the top end, and just makes it a tad bit more enjoyable listen, but you're not going to miss out if you don't have a solid amp, as I said. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please smash that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel because I have more content that I am steadily working on. I'm also going to be at Chicago Can Jam. Stop and say hi if you see me there. All right, guys, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Or that Can Jam if you're there. Peace.